Voice recordings. Yep, idiot. Straight up idiot. Have you ever felt that a professor sometimes just speaks way too quickly and you don't know if you take notes, if you pay attention, if you write down what's on the slides, or you're just like, ugh. Well, that's precisely when voice recordings can be handy. Before I dive into the nitty-gritty, let me tell you a few scenarios in which using voice recordings could be good. 1. In classes that are too difficult, and then perhaps are classes that you just would have to watch twice. Now, if you're recording it, you're gonna have the chance of fully paying attention to what the professor is saying, and then at home, you can review what was going on. So it's like watching the lecture twice. Number 2, when the professor speaks too quickly. So if you cannot pay attention and write down at the same time in that class, well, pay attention. And then when you get home, write down again based on what you saw, what you learned, and now that you're listening to the audio, you can write down the important points, okay? 3, when you don't have time to go back to your notes. So let's say you know you're not gonna have time to go back and study. Well, still having that lecture there could be useful, because at least you're gonna have some sort of contact with the material again. It's not the best thing, but it could still save you. And 4 is if you need to miss class, right? Instead of just missing class, you can actually ask your professor or a friend to record the lecture for you, because then at least it's kind of like you were there. At least you can listen to whatever happened in class. Another option is to record yourself. So just make sure you do that after you're writing down a summary. You're just not rambling about it, because then you're just going to be wasting your own time in the future. But once you're done studying and you want to make a summary, well, that's a really good way, again, that you could listen to yourself in the future, for example. And that's not even to say that that's going to activate your auditory memory. Okay, but Luis, is that ever a waste of time? Yeah. Yep, it could 100% be a waste of time. Now let me give you a few tips on how to avoid that. 1. Only record lectures that you know you're gonna have a hard time later. So if it's a class that you already know, don't record it, right? Or a class that you don't have trouble learning, don't record it. Otherwise, you're gonna have a whole library of audios. You're not gonna even know where things are. You're not gonna listen to any of them, because that's basically doing all the work twice, right? So you wanna make sure that whenever you record, you're being intentional about it. And that leads to my second point. Remember that when you record, that's basically setting yourself up to re-listen or re-watch the class, right? Now, when a class is happening, there's a whole bunch of other things. Maybe someone asks a question that you already knew, or the professor is just talking about something else for a few minutes. Those minutes are kind of just wasted, and you could be really studying and learning throughout those times. So make sure that if you record, again, you're being intentional about it, and you're just not doing it just cause. And number 3, and this is a really big point, okay? Never, ever record a lecture if what you're going to do in class is simply copy the slides. So if you're only gonna do one thing in a class, pay attention to your professor, pay attention to the logic. Do not go into autopilot, just you writing down whatever you see on the board or whatever it's on the slide. No, that's a complete waste of time. Don't do that. Again, if you're going to record because you only want to do one thing in class, make sure that one thing is actually actively paying attention to the logic, to the thought process behind that lecture. Finally, make sure you ask your professor before you record. Now, even in some states, it can be illegal for you to record without the professor knowing and without the professor saying that he or she is fine with it. Now, it even happened in college that the professor would ask for an email or a letter from you saying like, hey, this is for personal use, I am not going to share it, I'm going to delete it within 30 days or something like that. And then a final thing is, whenever you're listening to the audio, just like in class, do not copy word by word unless the professor says so. It's like, hey guys, hey class, copy this exactly like this because that's how I'm going to ask. If he or she doesn't say that, don't do it. Use your own words. Make sure you're, again, always actively learning. That's where most of your learning is going to come from. If you're on autopilot, you're probably wasting your time, as always, okay? And finally, that's the advantage of the recording. You can actually pause and play so you can think it through and write down your own thought process, your own ideas, and how you understand that material.